Hello everybody, welcome back to Let's Play Sword of the Stars 2. I don't know if you can hear, there's a bit of thunder in the background. Hopefully the storm will pass soon enough. So here we are, we have finally entered our galaxy that we will be playing for this Let's Play. Now, the starting position that I ended up as is I picked 5 just kind of randomly. I know that 1 starts you off at the bottom here. Apparently 5 is the opposite one, starts you off at the top. Not quite what I was hoping for. I was kind of hoping to start somewhere on the periphery, because then we might have a sort of a backdoor access to some, expansion area, and then also some fighting in the front. But, we'll make the best of it. Immediately, there's we have a neighbor. Let's see if we can. No, next turn I think we'll have encountered who it is. So I don't know yet what race this is, but the truth is that because everybody starts in a small area, and I gave everybody a 9 system starting empire, probably a lot of these systems are already going to be controlled by other races. So let's so a few things are in order. On your first turn, let's take a look at what we've started with. So our capital system is Archon. Pretty good name. So despite the fact that it is a huge system that has a lot of bodies, almost all of them are useless, which is a real shame. So the first thing I guess we have to talk about is the climate hazard. This is basically how uninhabitable the planet is. There's technology that might allow us to eventually colonize this, but it's certainly out of reach for us at the beginning. In this home system, we have Archon 5, which is not bad. 300 is not a huge, let's say, not insurmountable. It is fairly expensive in the early game, but it's a good planet. It's got size 6, size 10 being the maximum, and good resources. So, here's the development cost, 44K, right? So that means every turn it's going to cost you 44,000 space dollars to maintain the upkeep on this planet until you can get its climate hazard down to 0. That is partly a factor of the climate hazard, but also because it's in the same system as our capital, it's much cheaper. If you had this climate hazard far away from your empire, it would be more expensive to maintain. So let's take a quick survey of the systems we have. We have our main homeworld. We've got 1 colonizable planet here for 44. We also have the Cetus system, where we already have a size 3 with 5k resources. All right, not amazing. A size 5 with 6,000. That's not bad, but pretty expensive, right? 260,000 to maintain it. This one will never be able to colonize this. We'll never have the tech to deal with that. And Uxor is alone, but it is a size 8, so that's nice. So what I usually do in my games is I kind of just categorize all the planets into, is this going to be a planet that's going to give me production, or is it just going to be a planet that's going to give me money? And I base that decision on, does it have resources? And my rule of thumb is if it has more than 5,000 resources, then it's not a bad production planet. And if it has no resources, then we just make it into a sort of civilian planet for the economy. And concretely, what that means is we would set, so Uxor is a great example, right? Less than 5,000, plus it's a big planet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this slider here, maximum civilian population all the way to 100. This allows double the civilian population that would normally be able to live there. What happens is this is going to drain the resources of the planet, which cannot be replaced. There are some weird situations where it gets replaced, but normally this doesn't get replaced. So I'm like forfeiting the realistic capability of producing any ships here. But instead, I'm going to get a massive boost to tax income and also indirectly trade income later on. So I'm going to do that for this system. Now here, within each system, all of the production is sort of summed up together, right? So, this planet, it's a small planet. It's got almost 5K. Here we've got 6.1K. Like together, this is like a so-so production system. I guess I'll keep it like this for now, but I might decide later to just set all of these to just try to get a bit of tax out of it. Now, our main capital, this planet here, honestly could go either way. Obviously, at first we're going to be producing stuff out of our capital, but I'm going to go ahead and let our capital become overpopulated, and basically I'm sacrificing these resources. I'm just betting on our ability to find another system which will allow us to do a lot of production. So that's taken care of. We've basically decided that we are letting these planets get overpopulated because we want more population so that we can have more tax income. Let's go ahead. Okay, one more thing I guess we should do beforehand is let's look at what we've started with. We've started with 4 fleets, which are filled with ships. I'll get to that in a second. First, we start with a space station, which is a level 3 military base. We don't need a level 3 military base at the beginning of the game. In fact, you almost never need a level 3 military base. You only need it if you need to retrofit ships, which eventually we'll want to do, but we're going to set that up at like one of our military production systems. And I don't think it's going to be our capital. So it's costing us money. Let's see how much it costs us. It costs 100,000 per turn to maintain it. And we're not making that much money, right? So we're going to scrap this station. Now, we need a military station. So we're going to build one. Except this new one we're going to build is just going to be a level 1 military base. And so it's going to cost a lot less upkeep. So in order to build stations, you need to have a fleet that has a constructor in it, which we do. So we choose naval station. Now, you can place the stations manually if you wanted it to be around one planet instead of another. This is maybe important in sort of advanced tactics in a multiplayer game. Right now, I don't care. So it's just going to place it automatically. Okay, so we've assigned a mission. We need a military base because we need to be able to host sort of fleets at a system. And that's going to happen here. Right now, I used to have a lot of capacity. Now I scrapped the station, so there's like no capacity. I mean, these fleets will be okay temporarily, but next turn I'll have the new military base up and running, and that will be taken care of. Okay, now that we've freed up some space on our budget, let's take a look at our budget. So we are making about 430,000 per turn. Let's dial down this security because we only ever need it to be kind of notched onto this. And we have nothing really else to spend money on except building ships and science and technology. So we'll deal with science in just a moment. I just wanted to make sure that we drag this back down. Our tax is going to be at 5 for a while. So our economy is pretty much set, except we still could decide to go more money or more science. Let's take a look at the rest of our fleets here. This construction fleet, so every fleet needs to have a command ship, which is a CNC ship. And then currently, one cruiser command ship can control 54 command points CP worth of ships. A cruiser takes 6. So basically, at the beginning of the game, your fleets can be a maximum of 9 cruisers big. And that includes one of the cruisers is going to be the command cruiser. Supply ships, let's take a look at some of these designs, right? So my command ship, the human command ships look like this. This is like a terrible design, right? These are like the default designs that the game kind of randomly generates designs. So what we're going to do is on the first turn, we are going to redesign some of our ships. Normally, when you make a new design, you have to then build a prototype, which is very expensive. But on the first time, you can prototype ships for free. So it's very important to go and redesign all the ships that you're going to want to use at the beginning of the game. So let's do that. Let's redesign a command ship. And the redesign I want to make is, first of all, let's make sure, I mean, it does, but let's make sure that we put our minimal extra armor plating because we need this ship to survive. Now, in terms of weapons, I am going to... So, first of all, in terms of sections, we don't have any choices in the engines. Now, the front, we could put Hammerhead or Standard Command. Hammerhead has more guns and is tougher and is usually a better choice. If you look at the speed at the bottom, it has 110 kilometers per second. And if we go with the Standard, it's 105. So it's even faster, right? The only advantage to the Standard Command is that it's cheaper. And for a fighting ship, we're willing to spend a bit more. So this is going to be our fighting command ship. The two things I want to change here are, I'm going to change these light guns. Instead of being UV lasers, we're going to go with these beam lasers. And this is like a poor man's point defense. They're not really point defense weapons, but beams are very accurate. And they were going to have a chance, for example, against drones. They'll be able to shoot down drones. And they'll like be pathetic, but they'll kind of be able to shoot down missiles. Whereas these UV lasers are like, have no chance again as point defense. So this is a common thing that I do on my turn 1 ships, is I'm going to change my light turrets to beam weapons. This module is useless. This Semperfi module is like for morale and boarding. We don't need to worry about that. We're just going to put extra supply modules. This will increase the extra supply we have, and this is averaged throughout the fleet, so it will give my whole fleet more endurance, and so it can go on longer missions. So this is our new and improved command ship. Let's call it the Ark Royale. Sure.
Aye, Command. We'll save this for future
I am
reference.
also going to design a slightly different command ship, and this I'm going to call a civilian command ship. The idea is that there are some fleets whose job is just to like move, like to command colony ships and construction ships, right? They don't need to be heavily armored. So I've taken off the polysilicate alloy armor, and I've changed this from a hammerhead to a standard command. I'm still keeping missiles on there because those are useful. Sometimes the ships might have to fight off some kind of encounter. And I've kept the laser, the beam defense. One thing I forgot to do on the other ship is, this is just saving us clicks later, but the default weapon will be the missiles. This is a detail, we'll worry about it later. So I'm actually going to rename this, and I call these just a civilian command.
Yes, sir.
Okay, did I change it here? No, I didn't. It's alright. It's not a big deal. Okay, civilian command. Done. Now, construction ship, we already have. Construction ships, actually, there's nothing to do. You just make a construction ship. There are no settings or anything. So we don't need to redesign those. Let's take a look at the colony ships that we have. So, of all the missions, we've so far made a command and control. And now we're looking at the colonizer ships. Okay? This here, so the colony ships that we already have are okay, but again, they have this extra armor that we don't need, right? Let's compare. Look, the Ark Royal here costs 9,000 sort of production points to build and 171k like space bucks. Our civilian command costs 135, so it's a lot cheaper to build. So we don't need to spend all this extra money if we're just building civilian ships, right? So let's redesign this. Now, fortunately, it was already a standard command. Supply module is what we want. Let's keep the missiles, and again, let's turn this into just regular beamers. Change this back to missiles, and there we go. This is our civilian colonizers. Now, you could wonder, why don't I just delete this command, this old command design, which I'm never going to use, and the colonizer, and that you could do that. It doesn't cost us anything to keep the design around. Later, when we unlock the ability to retrofit ships, we might be able to do something and upgrade these ships. So that's why I'm kind of keeping them around. The designs around, I mean, but really you don't need to. Let's take a look at some of the other ships that we started the game with. We started with a scout design, although we don't have any scouts pre-built in our starting fleets. Scouts this scout design is using the extended range section, which is like a weak fighter that has extra supply and extra endurance. Honestly, it's not really needed. So we're just going to get rid of this design. We never really need, I don't find it's useful to make these extended range ships. Supply in the early game is very important because you need, so supply ships, as using the supply section, as you can see here, have a huge supply payload, and so they will really extend the endurance of your fleets. Unfortunately, this is a terrible supply design because why does it need the extra energy here, right? Clearly, it should have an extra supply module. So, you know, you get, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get unlucky with these random designs. So we're going to redesign this ship. Again, we're going to put the beamers. Now the question, by the way, when I click here, if you right click, it will change all the other turrets to be of the same weapon type. Now, I don't have to. I could just make this into, for example, a red cannon, right? It's up to you, but we want them all to be the same. Now, the question is, do I make it a standard command or a hammerhead? If I made it a hammerhead, obviously I would probably put missiles on it because we want these. I don't want my supply ships to be fighting in the front. However, missiles take a lot of supply as a weapon, and this ship's purpose is to provide supply, right, to the rest of my fleet. Now, if I made it like this, this supply ship has 7 turns, provides 7 turns worth of endurance on average to the whole fleet. If I just make it a standard command, it's going to give me 2 extra turns. So I'm going to go with the slower, weaker, but I'm still going to put the armor on it, supply ship, because its purpose isn't really to fight, it's just to extend the range of the mission, right? So this is going to be our supply cruiser, at least at the beginning of the game. So a Greyhound, sure. Again, I'm not going to delete this because I might, through retrofitting, I'll be able to maybe upgrade these original ships. All right, let's look at the armor. We have a few, so we started with a few supply ships, command ships, and armor ships, and a few colonizers. Let's see what we got as our armor ship. Okay, again, a terrible design, right? So it's terrible on a few levels. First of all, in the early game, I would strongly recommend, if you have the energy budget, using energy weapons. A, because your supply is limited as it is, and you want to extend far to do missions for a long time. B, ballistic weapons in the early game are very inaccurate, and they're just going to miss everything. So you at least want your heavy weapon to be a particle beam, which is a standard technology everybody has. It's just, particle beams all the beam weapons are basically 100% accurate, so you definitely want that. Our medium weapons should be plasma cannons. Again, they use energy. We want to free up supply so that our ships can go on missions for a longer period of time. And again, the same idea here with the small mounts. We're going to go with green beamers to have a chance at fighting drones, basically, and like pretend that we can fight against missiles. Now, in our engine module supply, because we don't need the extra energy, we have enough energy. Even though this is full of energy weapons, we have enough. And this, they gave us caravan, which is extra crew, but we don't need the extra crew. So again, we should just go supply with everything here. So see, our basic armor cruiser has 6-turn endurance because it's using all energy weapons. So that's why we don't really need the extended range, because if you make an energy weapon-based armor cruiser, you'll be all set. This is a good choice for default weapon. I'll explain why this is important later. Let's just Le Terrible, the terrible. I like it.
We'll keep this design on record.
Again, we're keeping the original armor design because we might be able to retrofit our old ships later. Now the question is, do we want to design any other ships here? In fact, we don't really. I'm going to talk about some tech choices and stuff later on, but we don't have a lot of very good technology yet, so we're limited in what we can do. In a multiplayer game, consider developing all of your options on turn 1, because you never know what's going to happen. Making drone carriers is good because people don't have point defense yet. Let's why not? I'm gonna go and make a repair and salvage ship. These should never be in a fight. You'll see how I use them. So, in fact, I'm gonna bet that there's never going to be in a fight. I'm not even gonna give them missiles. We're just gonna go like base energy weapons so that their supply rating is as low as possible. So these are just there to be floating around in the system, you know, to catch technology, basically, or to repair, literally to actually do their primary job, which is actually repair ships. So, yeah, these would be in a separate fleet, not the combat fleet. I don't think we're going to need these early on, but in case we get caught in like a very early war, it's New Jersey apparently. In case we get caught in a very early war, I won't have to prototype these ships. Yeah, that's basically what we need. I'm not going to bother like designing these other ships yet. We don't really need to worry about it. So, let's head back and look at the fleets that we have. You can do most of the rearranging of your fleets right in here. But just to show you, I'm going to open the fleet manager. You don't need to do it through here, but sometimes it helps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this construction fleet has 2 extra supply ships that the construction fleet doesn't really need them. So I'm going to bring them into the first survey fleet. And same thing here, this colonization fleet has 2 supply ships, which I'm going to bring into the second survey fleet. And now I think what I'm going to do is I have a decision to make in terms of whether I do sort of fancy tactics or simple tactics in terms of colonization. I think we're going to keep it simple. And what I was debating is I was debating adding colonizers directly to these survey fleets, but I'm not going to do that. I'll keep it simple for now, and I'll just explain what I meant a bit later. Our colony fleet is ready to go to work, and in fact, we could just tell it to colonize this other planet in our main system, right? Because 44K is not that expensive. We could probably afford that. So why don't you just go ahead and start colonizing this planet?
I'll take a personal interest in
we should send our survey fleets to survey nearby systems. Now, I don't know if we're going to find, you know, other alien races. Now, this system is empty, so I'm not going to survey it because it's not worth it. This system has maybe 2 potential planets. This one also 2 potential planets, and this one 2 potential planets. Let's survey these 2. So we are in Archon. It doesn't matter what you have selected at first. We just right-click here, survey. Now it will find amongst all your fleets who has the range to go. Choose a fleet, and there you go. We've issued the command. It will go and execute that mission. And let's have the other fleet survey over here. Okay?
Roger, Director.
Very basic. Now, one more thing we have to address on our first turn is technology. And I'll explain more of the strategy later, but your first priority should always be... well, one option is environmental tailoring. Will just make your colonization better and quicker and cheaper, which is important in the early game. So you should get this first or second. The other option is, and is a priority, is getting trade up and running, which is FTL economics. We are going to... I'm going to go for the bio one first because we're colonizing right off the bat, right? We've already started colonizing, and then we're going to get FTL economics right after that. These should always be your first 2 technologies, and we'll talk about the other choices next. Because this episode is starting to get long, and we haven't even ended the first turn. Finally, we can assign production. We could technically produce from all 3 of these planets, but at this point, we can't really afford to. Like, our capital world can produce fast enough that it's going to outpace our budget pretty quickly. And what I'm choosing is we're going to fill out our first colony fleet by building 6 more colonizers.
Shipyards gearing up.
Okay. Excuse me, I had to cough there. All right. We have assigned production. Let's take a look at our budget. From the budget, it is telling us, yeah, we're gonna owe some money next turn. So it will project your current savings and your projected savings, right? Sometimes it doesn't quite calculate everything. Remember, we are building a naval station, which is going to cost us 50,000, and each of these colonizers is costing us 100,000, right? So we're only making, and we have expenses of 100,000 per turn, plus security and research and whatnot. So our budget should be roughly balanced for the first few turns. So that's basically it for the first turn. We have arranged our fleets. We scrapped our level 3 military base because we don't really need it, and we've rebuilt a level 1 military base. We've assigned research. We've adjusted the dials on our economy. We've prototyped for free several better versions of the starting ships that we needed. We rearranged the ships in our fleets. One thing I haven't done, which I should do quickly, I guess, is in this screen you can arrange the default layout of your fleet so that when it enters combat, what layout it should have. Honestly, normally I'm very lazy and I just kind of don't bother with this, but since I'm here, I might as well do it. So I'm just gonna have them all appear in a line like this. And I mean, really what I should do is kind of like whatever. I should kind of rearrange this so that they're more in a blob, because the threats that you face in the early game can be best dealt with by just being in a blob, basically. I'm not saying this is a super sophisticated like military tactic, but in terms of what I know that I need to deal with in the early game, the blob is the way to go. So let's at the very least do this. But honestly, if we have a fight, I'll just rearrange it at the beginning of the combat. Okay, so that's it. That is our first turn. I'm actually surprised and glad that I was able to get through all of that in one episode. Obviously, I skipped over a lot of important details, but no worries. We will get to it in the next episode. So thank you all for watching. I will see you next turn. Take care.